Hey, what you're about to see or hear is a conversation I had with my friend Dr. Ryan Mullins that happened back in May 2024. We were discussing about theism tier list, where I list theism models such as monotheism, pantheism, deism, and many other in a tier list. Yeah, ridiculous idea. Back then I was that random. The original video was eventually taken down because I no longer feel that it represents my idea, so you don't see it anywhere. However, I still feel the conversation between me and Dr. Mullins is of significant value, so after some consideration, I re-upload the full conversation between me and him. Oh yeah, expect some random cameo from my babies at the end of the video, as I recorded the conversation in a hotel with them. Alright, let's go. Dr. Mullins, how are you?
Doing good today.
So, first of all, I'm so glad for you to accept my invitation, given your busy schedule and the nature of this video, which is not that serious. But I believe that even if it's not meant to be taken seriously, I still have to make an informed decision if I want to bring every theism model. And I believe that you're the one most fitting to inform me. So, with that being said, what is classical theism?
Yeah, so classical theism is a model of God. Let me say what a model of God is, and then I'll unpack classical theism. So the concept of God that everyone seems to agree upon is that God is a perfect being, which is the single ultimate foundation of reality. So everyone seems to go, yes, that's right. What a model of God does is it takes that concept and it develops a particular conception of it. So it'll give you some kind of thicker story, some sort of detailed account of what it means to be perfect and what it means to be the foundation of reality. And so classical theism is one attempt at unpacking that basic concept. So when it comes to saying that God is perfect, classical theism will say a lot of standard things. So it'll say that God's all-powerful, all-knowing, perfectly good, perfectly rational, perfectly free. So that's not terribly interesting. Where it gets interesting is classical theists will say there's 4 unique attributes that we affirm. And those 4 are timelessness, immutability, simplicity, and impassibility. And I can say more about those attributes in a second, if you want. And then when it comes to understanding how God is the foundation of reality, the claim there is that God creates the universe out of nothing, or creatio ex nihilo. And what that means is that prior to creation, there's God all alone, some sort of state of affairs where God exists all alone. How you understand that prior is really tricky because classical theists are committed to divine timelessness, but the consistent claim throughout all these different classical theists from across the world's religions is that affirm it, saying there's some prior state of affairs where God's all alone. Nothing is co-eternal with God.
So, how well does it explain complex philosophical questions concerning our existence and the existence of God?
I don't think it explains very well. So everyone wants to say God's eternal. So then that just means God exists without beginning and without end. That's not terribly interesting. If you want God to be timeless, like classical theism says, then you have to have God existing without succession. So God does not have a before and after. So that means there's no sort of even relational changes that could happen because changing in relationship entails having a before and an after. So this is something like Augustine understood very well. This is why Boethius says the category of relations, the accidental category of relations, does not apply to God at all. Moses Maimonides said the same thing. God, relationships do not apply to God at all. And then further, you have to say that, so not only does God exist without succession, God also exists without temporal location. So God does not exist right now. And that entails that God's immutable, so God cannot change in any way, shape, or form. Now, here's one of the problems you get. So Timothy O'Connor points out that all of our cosmological arguments for the existence of God, they depend on the idea that God somehow causes the universe to exist. But causation seems to be thoroughly temporal. All the different understandings we have of causation are in terms of causes being before their effects or simultaneous with their effects. And both of those are temporal notions. And so how is a timeless and completely unchanging God going to cause the universe to exist? That's really tricky. And then further, how is this being going to sustain each moment of existence? Because you're talking about a God without succession sustaining a world of ever ongoing succession. And if there's no explanation there, which I've never seen a cogent explanation for, then I don't see how you're going to get arguments, like good arguments for the existence of God up and running. And I don't see how you're going to really explain all the phenomena that we see. Like, why are we living in a world like this? I find it very difficult to explain.
So, is classical theism logically consistent?
Maybe. There's a couple worries you might have. One would be related to creation ex nihilo, and then the other would be related to your systematic theology or your overall worldview. So this is something very important. I should have said this earlier. A model of God is not a worldview. It is not a system of theology, because a model of God is just one piece of your systematic theology or your overall worldview. So this is why you could see someone like Maimonides, who's a Jew, and then Augustine, who's a Christian, both saying classical theism's cool. And they've got different like systems of theology, right? So the worry here, let's start with one worry from just internal to classical theism by itself, and then I can look at another one related to some claims from your theology. So go back to that creation ex nihilo stuff. There's some sort of state of affairs where God exists without anything at all. God exists all alone. And then you've got God existing with all this cosmic stuff. And it seems like there's going to be a lot of changes there. It seems like God's not going to be doing anything, and then God's doing something. He's bringing about the world. And then he's doing a whole bunch of stuff because he's got to sustain it from moment to moment. That's a lot of change right there. And classical theists will be like, no, there's no change. There's no change. And I'm like, looks like a lot of change. Here's another kind of change. Just in terms of God's knowledge. Because you should think that like if God's all-knowing, his knowledge is going to grasp the sum total facts of reality. He's going to know this is the exact way things are. And if God exists all alone, well, then he should know I exist alone. And then if God exists with a bunch of cosmic stuff, then he should know I exist with a bunch of cosmic stuff. There should be a change in his knowledge because the sum total facts of reality change. And then just simply, the really obvious change is just like you've got God by himself and then God with stuff like that. I mean, that just seems like a really obvious change. And so like you've got all these different kinds of changes. And so that seems deeply incoherent.
So, do you think any religious ritual is necessary for the belief of this model of God?
I struggle with this because, so if you've got God being impassible, so impassibility means God cannot be moved or influenced by anything outside of himself for his beliefs, his emotions, and his actions. And so any kind of ritual, I don't know what would be the purpose of commanding a ritual. So if you're looking at the Old Testament, you'll see all these different rituals that are commanded by God. But you'll see they'll say like, God is pleased by this. God's pleased by this sacrifice. God's pleased by the fact that you love justice. God's pleased by the fact that you love your neighbor. Well, that's an influence on God. And so that conflicts with impassibility, which says you cannot influence God. What you might say, if you're a classical theist in response, is you could try to say, well, no. It's not that it's pleasing God. That's just a metaphorical way of saying it's good for you that you do these rituals. And God knows that it's good for you to do these rituals, and that's why he commands it. And then I want to go, well, that's still inconsistent with impassibility, because that's God being influenced by considerations that are external to himself for his beliefs, his emotions, and his actions. He's issuing a command for you because of you. That's not consistent with impassibility. So I don't know what kind of ritual you could possibly have that would be consistent with this model of God.
How plausible does this God, do you think, exist?
I mean, given everything I've said, it sounds like it's really terrible, right? Let me try to build up a little bit of plausibility for it. So there's certain intuitions that a lot of people have about wanting to be happy. Like, I mean, you want to be happy, I want to be happy. Like, come on, like, obviously. Mm-hmm. When we start looking at the different kinds of things in this world that would make us happy, they're fleeting, they're transient, they don't last for very long. And you want something that's going to be stable, that will bring you about a very stable, everlasting happiness. And so a lot of people will want to jump to immutability and timelessness for something like that. And then when you've got some other claims like, well, to be happy is to be in relationship to the greatest good, and divine simplicity says God is identical to the greatest good, then you're like, oh, well, okay, then I need to be in relationship with this thing. Sure, it can't be related to me, but I can be related to it. And so you can see how some people would start to try to develop some sort of plausibility here. So I don't want to say it's just completely nuts, because there's a lot of rationality behind the scenes. I just don't think it really works out in the end. but there is a rationality there. I think there's an initial plausibility there.
Okay, so if you have to put it in a tier list with C being the lowest and God tier, pun intended, the highest, where would you put classical theism?
I'd put it at a B. Like, I don't think it's the lowest. Yeah, I don't think it's the lowest. There's I think pantheism's the lowest, but we'll get into that in a bit. Yeah.
Okay. Right. So before pantheism, let's talk about deism. What is deism?
So deism, some people want to say it's a model of God. I keep going back and forth on this because as I see it, deism is any model of God I think you want, really, plus some other claims about the way God interacts with the world. So here's the kind of standard claim we say today. It's not historically accurate, but I'll explain that in a second. So the standard claim is God creates the universe and then just kind of lets it go. There's no interest in it after that. So sometimes you'll say it's like God winds up a clock, sets it on the table, and just lets it do its thing. That's not exactly right. So historically, what you see with a lot of deists is they'll say God created the universe and he still has some kind of general providence in the world, but there's no special interventions. There's no miracles. And here's one of the arguments for that. So some people will say, well, if God needs to intervene miraculously, well, he's not very smart, is he? Like surely if he would have figured all this out in advance, right? He's providentially arranged the world so he doesn't have to intervene miraculously. And these are the actual kind of arguments you'll see during the Enlightenment. Is come on, a rational God would do this. So Leibniz does this against Newton, because Isaac Newton's views on the way the planets orbit, the planets would get off track a bit, and so Newton was kind of like, maybe God just nudges the planets back in place. And Leibniz is like, come on, that's a stupid God. Surely God would be smart enough to figure it out in advance. So the deists do the same thing. They're like, right, let's carry on this line of reasoning. Would God really need to miraculously intervene all the time? No, he's going to figure out how to providentially arrange the world in advance. So there's no miracles at all. God wants you to grow in virtue and in wisdom. Well, good. He gave you a conscience, so start using it. These are the kind of things they'll say.
Okay. Next question is, how well does it explain complex philosophical question concerning our existence and the existence of God?
Depending on which model of God they want to go with. So a lot of deists, as far as I can tell, were something like neoclassical theists, where they would be rejecting some of the classical attributes. So some of it would be affirming God's temporal, or so then you can explain how God's able to go from being all alone to being with some cosmic stuff. God causes the universe and he changes. He goes from not doing anything to doing something. And he's able to causally sustain the universe from moment to moment. So you can get a lot of explanation. Can you get an explanation of all the kinds of phenomena we see in the world? It depends which ones you're going to grant. If you think that there are miracles in the world, well, then deism can't explain that. But if you just think there are no miracles, then deism's that's right. This is what we've been saying all along.
So, do you think it's logically consistent?
I think so. Again, if it's just by its claims by itself, if you're going to try to fit it within some particular religious system where there's all these miracle claims, so Thomas Jefferson, this is a great example of this. So there's this thing called the Jefferson Bible, where Thomas Jefferson tries to gives you the teachings of Jesus without all the miracles, and you're like, okay, but there's a lot of miracles like that. It seems like you're cutting out a lot of stuff, and he's just like, it's fine. Whereas a lot of Christians are like, no, that's not okay. So the fit with a particular religion is going to be really difficult. But if you're a deist and you're just like, that's fine, I think all the religions have some interesting things about them, but they're not really true. Then yeah, you'd have some kind of consistency there.
So so the next question is, although I can already predict what you're going to say about this, but do you think any religious ritual is necessary for the belief of deism?
I don't know, because it depends which deist group you ask. So I'm in Scotland at the moment, and there's these different humanist societies around, and a lot of them are inspired by deism. So there's still this sense of we can just kind of figure out through reason alone that it's good that humans live in fellowship and in community and try to meet regularly to talk about these things. And it's good that we develop virtue, because we can figure out through reason alone that this is something God wants. So it really depends what you think you can figure out through reason alone. Specific rituals, that's probably just going to be down to your tradition, but like some idea of like meeting in community and talking about these things and developing like a culture based around the idea that God and reason, something like that, I guess.
How plausible do you think this God exists?
Again, since I think it can be consistent, you could be a deist and be consistent with lots of different models of God. Then the plausibility of each model of God is going to be the kind of think the same plausibility of deism. So if it's a neoclassical or an open view or a panentheist view, the plausibility of those is going to be the same, I think.
Okay, so the tier list,
Mm-hmm.
where does it go?
Well, I guess you could put it at least at an A, because since it's consistent with multiple models of God that are logically consistent, or at least seem to be, and it's making really minimal claims. I mean, that raises the plausibility of it quite high. Again, though, if you think that there are real genuine miracle cases in the world, then you're going to want to go, let's put that down lower, because I'm quite happy with saying there's definitely some miracles here or there. That's why I don't want to put it like super high, but it's got a lot of logical consistency to it.
Okay, I'm going to consider deism higher then. Okay, so the last one is we're going to talk about pantheism. Spoiler alert: you seem to already answer the which tier it goes, but come on, what is pantheism?
Yeah. So pantheism is the view that God and the universe or the multiverse, just depends how much stuff you think exists, God and all that cosmic stuff are identical, and that's kind of weird, and that's usually acknowledged though. So T.L. Sprigg is like a more contemporary pantheist, and then Shankara is an Indian philosopher who's very famous for defending this model of God, and they'll both say that most of the stuff you see around you, like the distinction between you and me, the distinction between myself and this chair that I'm sitting on, all that's like an illusion. It's all deeply illusory, because at rock bottom, all there is to reality is just God.
Okay, so how well does it explain complex philosophical question?
I don't think it can, because I think it raises all these questions, right?
Right.
I mean,
yeah.
like right now, like you're sitting there and like in your hotel room with your kids, and it feels like there's a lot of distinct people running around you, and then I'm watching my friend's dog at the moment, and I'm pretty sure I hear like the dog walking around. I'm like, that's a distinct thing from me, and all of this is deeply is part of this deep-seated fundamental illusion, and I'm like,
right.
Well, now I've got some things I need to explain. Why am I in this deep-seated illusion? And then how did God get in this like universal state of like deep-seated illusion? Like all it's doing is just raising lots of questions that just seem really, really weird. So I don't think it can really explain anything.
Okay. The next question is about its logical consistency. I think I already know your answer, but please answer it.
I mean, I get. There's nothing illogical in terms of like a strict, obvious contradiction between just saying like everything is an illusion, but given other things I know to be true, that I feel that I know some stuff, and if I know some stuff, then I feel one of the things I know is that I exist, and I feel that another thing I know is that I'm not you. I feel very confident about that, and so it's going to contradict those things that I think I know to be true.
Okay. The next one is, do you think any religious ritual is necessary for this model of God?
I don't know. So you'll see a lot of environmentalists who are pantheists say like this is part of the motivation for like maybe worshiping the earth or really taking care of the earth. So there'll be some rituals attached to that. I find it slightly odd because I'm thinking I'm identical to God too. So why should I be worshiping the earth? Shouldn't I be worshiping like myself? So that seems a little bit weird. For someone like Shankara or someone in that tradition, though, they'll say there are certain rituals you need to do in order to get out of the illusion. So you'll need to engage in some kind of mindfulness meditation to realize that you are not really this distinct thing. You need to be able to undergo this sort of meditative process to eventually figure out how to dissolve back into just God itself. So some people will say like, yeah, there's some kind of rituals that go along with it.
Okay, so the last question. Why does it go to C tier?
Yeah.
Why do you put it there?
Well, I just there. Okay, when you're studying philosophy and theology, one of the things you try to do is you try to be very charitable to everyone. You have to hear everyone out and really entertain ideas very seriously, and that's true. You really should do that. But at some point, you get old and you get cranky. And I'm 40 now, and I'm starting to get cranky, and I'm just going, I've entertained this view long enough. Are you really asking me to take seriously the idea that I'm identical to God and that this chair is identical to God and that like the McDonald's I had yesterday is identical to God? Because I'm pretty sure that cheeseburger was not identical to God. Like I just can't take this seriously anymore.
Okay, right. That wraps it all. So yeah, this is more of fun than it is serious.
Yeah.
Okay, so thanks a lot, Dr. Ryan.
Mm-hmm.
But before we finish this interview, do you still interested to talk about panentheism?
Sure, we could talk about that. I've published a few papers on that.
All right. So, what do you think about panentheism?
So, one of the difficulties with panentheism is trying to figure out what it is. So I've published, I think, 5 papers on this, and I've just been asked to publish another one, and I'm still trying to figure out what on earth it is. So here's the slogan that you'll get. You'll get the claim that the universe is in God, but God is more than the universe. And then sometimes they'll also go, oh, and God's in the universe too. And you're like, cool. I'm like, well, what does that mean? And then they'll say, well, our view is more scientific than the other models. And I'm like, cool. Okay. And it's more like religiously significant. It's more spiritual. It's more. And then you're like, okay, well, what is it? I can't judge it to be like better if I don't know what it is. And sometimes when you look at the claim that the universe is in God, it just boils down to God is omnipresent. And I'm like, well, everyone's got that. So you've not said anything unique. Sometimes people will say, well, so Philip Clayton has this recent, a few years old now, paper where he says, well, what's unique about panentheism is that it says God's temporal and God's passible. And I'm like, well, the neoclassical theists and the open theists, they've been saying that for ages. And also, some of the most famous panentheists throughout history have denied temporality and have denied that God's passible. So, for instance, Friedrich Karl Krauss, the guy who coined the term panentheism, he affirmed that God was timeless and simple and immutable and all that. So it's like, this just can't be what panentheism is. So the best I can figure out is that you deny creation ex nihilo. And that's pretty clear, pretty consistent throughout most panentheists. They'll say creation ex nihilo is false. God has always existed with a universe of some sort. That might be he eternally creates, or it might be some kind of necessary emanation from him. You see these different people who are labeled as panentheists all affirming something like this. But beyond that, it's really up for grabs what panentheism is.
Do you think it's logically consistent?
I think so, in the sense that you can give I think you can give some good arguments for why God would have to create a universe of some sort. And I don't like those arguments, but I don't have like a logical contradiction that I can really point out very clearly against some of them. Mm-hmm. So some of them would be eternal, God's eternal, and God's eternally causing the universe. Eternal causes have eternal effects. And I'm like, okay, I can do some stuff to like try to argue against that, but it's not like a clear cut, like here's a contradiction, screw you. Like I don't have that against the view. The strongest argument I have against it is you guys are really vague. Tell me what your view is. Like so, but if I cast it in terms of this God in the universe, God always is creating a universe of some sort or existing with a universe of some sort. Then I'm like, okay, there's no obvious contradiction right there on the surface.
So if you have to put it in a tier list, which tier?
I guess you could put it in. I would put it in B mainly because of the fuzziness. Because so many people who are panentheists, when I'm reading them, they just say the most like wild things or just all these metaphors that they stole from somebody else, and so that doesn't really help your view out. If you're saying my view's better than yours, but I'm going to take the metaphor you use and say, oh, it's my metaphor. So like I'm just stealing from everybody else. Like that doesn't really help your view out.
If there is any theism model that deserves the God tier, which theism model that you put there?
The two that I would put there would be neoclassical theism and open theism, because I think they're the most consistent. They're still going to have some issues that they face, but I think they're the most plausible as well. Yeah.
Right. I really interested about the neoclassical and the open theism, but I think I have to reserve that discussion for another time. It's been a very I'm sorry, my kid is
That's all right.
on. Yeah, so I think we have to get another discussion in the future about those. Once again, thank you very much, Doctor. I'll see you again next time.
Yep. Thank you.